Thanks so much, Howard, and welcome to all of you on the webcast today. We're excited to be joining you for about an hour, maybe a little less, to talk about our topic, developing resilient leaders during times of uncertainty. As Howard mentioned, my name is Laura Chapin. I'm a senior solution partner with CoachHub. I'm actually on our behavioral sciences team, which is in our coaching lab. Our main goal is to bridge the gap between science and the practice of coaching, doing research and developing innovative design features and content that enables sustainable behavior change. And we also partner with clients and customers like Deanne to create solutions that really resonate for their organization and meet their business outcomes. I joined CoachHub about 4 months ago, most recently coming over from Harvard Business Publishing Corporate Learning, where we focused on leadership development and management. Prior to that, over 20 years in learning and development, HR, organizational development, talent management, and also executive coaching. I earned my coactive coaching training and certification over 10 years ago, and have also run coaching practices within 3 Fortune 100 organizations at the enterprise and business level. So it's no surprise that I am very passionate about what we're up to here, really driving the use of coaching to enable behavior change and supporting leaders and all employees at all levels in both leadership and their overall well-being. So thank you again for letting us join you all today. And in particular, I would love to continue the conversation and welcome Deanne with a little bit more of a background about where she is today and her impressive background leading up to her current post as the Chief People Officer at Olo. And she'll tell you even more about that today. But what I'm really interested to share now is that at Olo, she has actually driven the employee base by over 25x and executed a successful IPO. Prior to COVID, she also operationalized a workforce that was 65% remote, really creating a unique value proposition within the tech market. And prior to Olo, she worked in various people, corporate relations, and management roles at UVA, their Darden School of Business, at KKR, Marriott, and other technology startups. Deanne holds a Bachelor of Arts in Business from Walla Walla University, and she lives in lovely Seattle with her husband and 2 sons. So Deanne, welcome. We're so pleased to have you partner with us today. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to say hello and any other words of hello that you'd like to.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you all today. Very excited to be able to talk on this topic in particular and to join Laura. She's been a fantastic partner, and the whole team at CoachHub has been just absolutely fantastic. So excited to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Thanks, Deanne. Let's see, and I just realized that my camera is a little wonky. I apologize for that in terms of coming off of a different screen. I'm actually getting an internet unstable notice. So if I go off camera, all is well. I'm still here, and I'll make sure that I stay on audio, and we'll make that as seamless as possible, but just wanted to offer that update. So thanks again, Deanne. As we move into this, what I'd also like to offer is a brief introduction to CoachHub. For those of you who may not know us just yet, or if we're new to you, I'd like to offer a little bit about our story. We began over 3 years ago when 2 brothers in Berlin, Jonas and Maddie, they founded our organization with the mission of unleashing the best in people at all levels of the organization through professional and personalized coaching. We have a passion for high quality solutions and building very collaborative and supportive cultures. And as a result, we became the leader of digital coaching in Europe. We've now entered the North American market in the last year or so. We have team members from our coaching lab that I just mentioned that I'm part of, sales, our client success team, HR, and more. And that's all in service to helping our customers throughout our North American base. We do have 15 offices around the world and over 3,000 certified coaches in 70 countries, and they deliver coaching solutions in over 60 languages in all time zones. Our solution is founded on science. We are continually evolving through our behavioral scientist and lab team, and we are led by Dr. Jonathan Passmore and also in partnership with our Science Council. So through our digital platform, our goal is to bring that scalability and flexibility for personalized coaching really having a coach in your pocket, as we say, so that you can really drive effective behavior change to meet your organization's business needs, while also helping your folks at all levels grow as a person and inspire as a leader. All right, so let's talk about what we are going to be going over today. We know that in today's uncertain and very rapidly changing business environment, executive and leadership development at all levels really does drive business and talent outcomes. It is a competitive advantage when we have strong and effective leaders, but we also know the qualities that leaders and organizations need today to really thrive are different than they were in the past. So we also know that the best ways to develop those leadership capabilities have also evolved. So in our conversation today, we'll talk about the importance of developing leaders in today's environment, how digital coaching can support and grow your leaders. We'll talk, most importantly, my favorite part will be with Deanne, getting to hear about your firsthand experience using digital coaching as a lever. And then also we'll talk about a few practical tips on how that you can actually implement right away in thinking about how to grow your leaders and enhance your current strategy. And as Howard mentioned, we'll close with a Q&A. So let's get started. Let's start with the importance of developing leaders in today's environment. We know that executives repeatedly, for years now, of course, have pointed to the need for effective leadership at all levels and to develop that next generation of leaders. What I think is really interesting, and we've all talked about this a lot, right, is that in this environment of uncertainty and constant disruption, the imperative for having great leaders at all levels is just more important than ever. And a recent report by Gartner in particular, I noticed, really loved how they succinctly summarized some of the key challenges today, how hybrid work is driving business transformation. We know we have the Great Resignation and rising turnover that's increasing the competition for talent. And we know that the pressure is mounting for progress on DE&I. So leadership is not only important, it's also more challenging than probably ever before. And we know from multiple sources that organizations who provide high quality development, particularly to their leadership population, are more likely to have improved talent attraction, improved engagement, improved retention, and higher performance. And we know that organizations who invest in their leaders and in their people also are better at navigating change, driving that execution, and also driving innovation so that they do stay competitive. And yet, with all of these billions of dollars that we know we invest as organizations annually, just in the US alone, I noticed a finding just recently that talks about how only 10% of CEOs are strongly believe that leadership development initiatives have a clear business impact. So there is more work to do. And as a result, we need to think about what do leaders need to do well? What are those capabilities that are priority? And how do leaders learn best? How do they develop? How do they shift and change their mindset, skills, and behaviors? So as that is a bit of our backdrop, I'd really like to hear from you all. Some of you may have seen a recent report by Gartner where they identified the top priorities for HR leaders in 2022. So let's launch this poll and hear from you all. What are your top priorities? I'd love to see how synchronous it is with Gartner's findings or if there's some outliers. So I'll give everyone a moment to answer those. Terrific. I love the real-time results. Yeah, we're seeing current leadership and future leadership bench and DE&I neck and neck there as top priorities. Excellent. And I can imagine, of course, the topic today probably drew more folks to talk about, their current leadership bench. So excellent. So let's look at what Gartner's overall results had to show. I'll move here. There we go. So it's really interesting to see how your priorities are mapping to the survey results. And I think it's what's most obvious to our session today is that developing leaders in that bench, number 3, has the most direct tie. I also did notice that a recent study by DVI, they reported that HR leaders' confidence in their organization's leadership bench continues to drop. Their recent report showed that only 11% of HR leaders say they have a strong bench to fill leadership roles, which is actually the lowest in a decade. And they offer some different reasons why, but the fact remains is we need to work on that bench. Some other trends that I think are really interesting here too. about the leadership bench that I'd love to, hear maybe through chat or in our Q&A if some of these resonate. But some really interesting things that are coming our way. We know that companies need leadership capabilities as organizations become flatter and more agile. I know a recent report from Gartner, one of their predictions is that by 2024, 30% of corporate teams will be without a boss due to their agile and hybrid nature of work. So with so many people and teams operating without a formal manager, that means more employees. People at all levels are going to need to embrace leadership capabilities regardless of title. We also know they're going to need to do that in a hybrid environment. And that increase in the hybrid environment really means that managers need new skill sets in order to lead effectively in that type of environment. And another study just showed that 47% of employees believe that their manager can lead the team to success in the future. So I'm sure all love to see that number is higher than 47%. I also noticed that Gartner and others are really sounding the alarm on how a new imperative in many organizations is to structure talent management around skills rather than roles. And that's really to help organizations be more adaptable. And the implication then, of course, is that means teams will be different, work will be different, structured differently. And that means they'll need to be managed and led differently, both the people and the work. So there's new ways of working that we are all leaning into that will continue to have an emphasis of how we need to stay ahead of the skills needed. And then lastly, I'd want to point out how a recent report from Qualtrics showed that there's a higher rate of leader turnover than other folks within the business due to the extreme pressures of leading today. And another report even mentions how managers are twice as likely as individual contributors to hit the job market today. And I think we'd all probably agree, of course, too, that it's also really unfortunate that the exodus of female leaders is at its highest. And it is higher than for our male leaders. And some of these studies, what's also interesting and a little troublesome is that they're indicating that female leaders, their report of their intent to stay has actually gone down. And so we could expect a little bit more tumultuous exodus in terms of really hanging on to some of our best female leaders. So I do think as we look at all of these categories, these all tie to leadership, even though that leadership bench is the most obvious. Each one of these categories here do demand effective leadership mindsets, skills, behaviors, and to really drive change as people work in new ways. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Deanne, and see kind of what are you thinking? What are you noticing as the top priorities in your organization? Or how did these trends sit for you? And based on our poll results, what are you noticing?
I'm noticing that it's the wild, wild west out there right now, as I'm sure many of you are. I laugh. It's not really funny, but it's kind of like, how do you really deal with it any other way except for just chuckle and, you have to be agile. So it's really interesting to me on the screen, the organizational design, change management, that's not just about your business model and how you're thinking about the team, today, but how you're going to function as the team, comes in, comes out, shifts around, and really having that resilience mindset of, okay, well, it's a new picture today than it was yesterday, and really helping support the team get through that so that we remain productive and feel engaged as a team, despite whatever today's new normal might be. And that's tough. It's moving a bit faster, I think, than we're used to, in addition to the normal things that are on our plates at work. And that can be tough to navigate. So that's really top of mind for me this year.
Yeah, I'm betting that resonates for a lot of folks who are listening right now. And the Wild Wild West is probably a pretty good analogy. Thanks, Deanne. That's terrific. And I'd like to move us through to another thing that we're noticing is we know that leadership skills have been evolving even well before the pandemic. That's the reality, but we do know it's certainly swung even further over the last 2 years with the warp speed of change. I noticed too, I just want to share one more kind of data point that I thought was interesting as we think about these skills changing is there was a report last year that showed that 92% of talent professionals, maybe many of you on the session today, reported that soft skills were equally or more important to hiring than hard skills. And they also mentioned that 89% said that that when those new hires didn't work out, it was usually due to the lack of these critical soft skills. And yet, as you can see here, 77% of managers report that those soft skills are still their biggest weakness, and despite the training that they may be receiving. So we know that these were important skills even before. They continue to be even more important today. And we're going to actually ask you to weigh in here in just a moment on what are some of those skills, those leadership skills that your organizations are needing in order to meet the need. Before we do that, I'll just highlight here just some emerging gaps in leader readiness. You can see here that HR leaders believe that leadership is a high priority, and yet most organizations aren't quite ready to meet their leadership requirements. We see that less than a third say that they're effectively developing leaders to meet the evolving challenges, and more than half of CEOs say that development of the next gen leaders is a top challenge. So I'd like to hear from you all. With all of that as background, what are the emerging priority skills that your leaders need? And this should be an open platform that Howard will be launching so that you can just freeform enter those skills and we'll see those come up. Empathy. What else? Love watching these come in. Empathy, communication, soft skills, flexibility, listening. All right, keep them coming. I'd love to compare this list to the one that we've compiled based on some of the latest research surveys. Emotional intelligence. All right.
They're all so closely coupled, right, Laura?
Exactly. That's what is so fascinating, right? It's like so many of these could almost come under one umbrella.
And there it is. It all comes down to communication right there. That's a screenshot for you.
It's getting bigger and bigger. Excellent. All right. Seeing trust. Absolutely. We know is the foundation. Followership, it looks like. Adaptability. All right. Terrific. Remote work. There's another really important one. Actually, I'm going to wait just a moment. We're seeing quite a few more come in. Workload, collaboration. Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and close that because I think what we're seeing, what's fascinating to me, not surprising, but is the overlap of what you all are reporting and what we're also seeing in our own research and research of others. You guys provided a really terrific comprehensive list, and as we look at that and we compare this to some of the leadership capabilities we know are out in the market that people are saying they need today, they really are human-centered skills. Might be some of you, if you use Berson's work, you might call them power skills in your organization. But there are those things that really mean that leaders know their people, they're managing the full person, and they're looking at that overall employee experience. All of these things, of course, mattered before, but in the new world of work, they matter even more. So Deanne, I'm wondering if you consider this list of emerging skills, along with what we just saw in the word responses, what's your take on this? What's resonating and what all is showing up for you at OLO?
I mean, I have to say the list is a pretty good picture of, everything. And how do you choose from this list? Those that, pop out are probably resilience, communication, transparency, authenticity. I think that, if you hit that, you can take care of a couple of others like psychological safety and inclusion. God, I mean, I could touch on everything listed here. It's a vital list, right? And everything on this list plays an important role. But I think if you choose a couple of them, like the resilience and communication, transparency, authenticity, I think it could kind of really be the overarching to help with some of those others as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's interesting to see that what is showing up, of course, across organizations, across industries, across geographies. One of the key items, of course, being resilience, that we're here to talk a little bit about today, how that showed up for you all within your leadership coaching population. And the last thing we thought we would highlight here is we just talked about how the expectations are changing, growing, and are very high from CEOs, HR, but we also know the expectations are emerging and changing from our employee base. This is just one example of many, but really shows how employees are expecting their leaders to be and look and feel different, how they show up with them on a daily basis. We're moving to help people think about their purpose, their development. They want leaders to be their coach. They want ongoing coaching and feedback conversations. They want to focus on their strengths, and they really want to be seen as a whole person. Again, driving that sense of uniqueness, belonging, and bringing them their full selves to work and making a difference. All right, so with that, let's actually move on to how digital coaching can support and grow your leaders. We're kind of moving from the what, those skills that folks are seeing that need to be developed, to how. How are organizations changing how they grow, develop, and support their leaders? So we know many organizations have been doing the work of transforming their current approaches over the years, and even more so today due to the pandemic, moving to virtual instructor-led training, coaching, mentoring, online learning, etc., in order to work in our new ways of working. We know that investing in the development of leaders, again, is so essential, but traditional leadership development, while in many ways was successful, there were a lot of gaps. And so now we have this opportunity to improve on programmatic, say, event-based learning, to learning that makes a difference and really helps people change their behavior. So with that, what we'll be talking about as our backdrop today is that thinking about what coaching is and how it could be used. So we know coaching can be a supplement to leadership development programs or journeys that they're on to really drive home the learning and application. It can run concurrent to a learning journey, say as one-on-one coaching and or group coaching with those folks that are learning together. And we also know that coaching can be offered as a standalone offering, just one-on-one with leaders, as an example. So that's kind of the backdrop for our conversation. And we'll hit on just a quick moment of what are some of those challenges with traditional learning that we've been experiencing up until now. We know that leaders really do, and all learners, but particularly leaders, are going to learn best when it's outcome-based. It's meaningful to them. It's tied to their personal development and growth, their sense of purpose. We know it needs to be highly personalized and applicable to their day-to-day. And we also know that it needs to be able to be applied right away. We do know that forgetting curve is real. If people don't put into practice what they're learning, they tend to forget what they're learning. So coaching offers that ability to learn within the moment, highly personalized, and put it into practice. And so as we move into this conversation deeper on coaching, I'd like to just kind of level set of what are we really talking about? What do we mean when we say coaching? What do we mean when we say digital coaching? So when we talk about coaching, you can see our definition here. It is all about a partnering process between the coach and the client that helps them reflect on themselves, their situation, their context. They identify new insights and actions, unlock that potential to become their best version of themselves. And then digital coaching is really about it's still coaching. It's really around the methodology of delivery. So this is where we talk about digital coaching, is where it's delivered between the coach and coachee live. It's a collaborative conversation. It is secure digital communications, which is really important for that confidentiality piece. Typically over video and audio, we want that to feel as natural as two people sitting in a room together. It is scalable, it's measurable, and is available again at individuals at all levels of the organization. I know for me personally, having led coaching practices from many years ago, I couldn't even envision what was possible with digital coaching 10 years ago. So to see the scale that we're able to provide coaching, it's kind of a brave new world, and we're seeing the amazing results as a result of what's possible today. And what makes it so effective? Just a couple of things here. We won't go into all of them, but one thing I do want to highlight is the autonomy and personalization, where coachees really are able to develop their own solutions. It is in context, it's in their own environment. Again, highly personalized and highly focused. It really does then, of course, help with their motivation, their engagement, their follow through and commitment in the coaching. And it helps with that transfer of learning to help make learning a habit and the new behaviors and capabilities a habit. And then I'll also just highlight here a few things. It's a few more points just to show the impact of coaching. We know that overall there is certainly improved productivity, collaboration, and performance, particularly when coaching is on its own or coupled with learning and development initiatives. And then the last thing I want to highlight here is what I think is something sometimes overlooked or maybe missed is that we know coaching is helping people with their tactical problem solving, helping people think through what are my opportunities, what are my barriers, what are my options, accountability for making decisions. Coaches aren't going to give them the answer, but it really helps them think through that tactical problem solving. We know that it supports in developing leadership capabilities. But then last but not least is learning how to learn. And I'd love to hear your take on this too, Deanna, is one of the important pieces of coaching is that it helps leaders in developing the skills and habits to do self-reflection, to actually look at that experiential learning cycle, ensure that they're learning even well after the coaching engagement ends, because they've made that a new habit. It's a new muscle that they have, learning how to learn. So I think that that's a really important piece to call out there. So anything that you would add to that, Deanne? I know you've been thinking about, what comes even after coaching once people finish their engagement. What do you think of this learning to learn piece?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think, if you're going to really commit to coaching and working on yourself and building toward your future, it can't be a one-stop and done, experience. It can't be the 6-month engagement or 12-month engagement, whatever the engagement length is, and then you're good to go. It has to be a constant, right? It's like going to the gym. If you want to be fit, you have to commit to the practice. And so if you conclude with your coach thinking about, how would this have been, put into a discussion with my coach? How would I have thought about it based on my learnings and takeaways from that 6-month experience? How can I move past where I'm stuck here? How can I, what tips, tools, and tricks did that coach, highlight for me and help work with me on, other related topics, unrelated topics, so that I can navigate this. So it's a constant exercise, and that coaching platform timeframe really give you the tools and the structure so that you can revisit it going forward.
Great. And so I'm going to move us on. I agree with everything there. And I actually think it's going to tie into our conversation here in just a moment, hear more about the OLO experience. We want to spend the back half of our time together focused on that. So last thing I'll highlight here is that we know, again, going back to that learner and leader point of view, what is it that they're looking for? What are they hoping for? And so we see just some feedback here where, a quarter of leaders indicate that leadership development is either non-existent or maybe low quality, or they don't have exposure within the organization. And what they really are hoping for, what they want, is a focus on some external coaching. And we know one of the reasons for that, especially in times of uncertainty, is that leaders are looking to make time for learning in ways that are fitting within their workflow, and they want that greater external validation that they're doing the right things. So another thing that coaching brings to the table, and I think one of the things to me that is really great news is that we are no longer constrained at using coaching just at those tippy top of the house or execs or successors, but really able to use high quality coaching for folks at all levels of the organization. And with that, before we turn it over and start talking more deeply about the OLO experience, I'd love to hear from you all who are on the call today. How are you leveraging coaching in your organization? And if you can make your selection from the poll, internal only, external only, both internal or external, or if you don't use coaching, when are you thinking about adding coaching in? What type of time frame? Great, we're seeing some real-time results coming in. Looks like the Okay, so we've got is both internal and external. Oh, I spoke too soon. Internal and external, and then the internal one up to 33. So really neck and neck. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got a tie of internal coaches only, both internal and external. Excellent. So about a third using some combination, and some, of course, using external coaches only as well. Excellent. Thank you. That really helps us shape our conversation as we go through the rest of the time today. And we have a two-part poll. So we have one more question for you. Is how would you like to use coaching? In what ways would you like to use it that maybe you aren't yet? Or how are you using coaching? So we'll open that poll, and then we're going to move into our OLO experience. Standalone and in alignment with leadership development are tied neck and neck. Let's see if those numbers change. Had a feeling they might. Also used within some broader initiatives. I think Deanne will speak a little bit to that. I think that's one thing that probably will resonate for the OLO experience. Integrated into some business imperatives. Great. And now I see that integrated with leadership development program journeys is winning out a bit. All right. We have some additions with leaders and their intact direct teams. Terrific. So it looks like mostly within leadership development program journeys, but some other really great use cases out there as well. Terrific. All right. Thanks, Howard. We can close that poll. And thank you all for your input. That's really informative as we move into our next, and I think most important section. So Deanne, this is where I'd really love to double click into your experience. So can you tell us a bit about, first of all, OLO? Who are you as a business? What do you do? And then we'll talk about a little bit more business context in the program itself.
Of course. So for those of you that haven't heard of OLO, I'm not necessarily surprised because we are a white label service product. We create an opportunity, a platform, if you will, for our customers to be able to allow their consumers to skip the line. So if you've heard of Shake Shack, Denny's, Wingstop, there are many others out there. We provide the means for them to be able to offer their products to their consumers so that they can skip the line, so that you're craving a burger on the way home, Shake Shack is really on your brain, but you do not want to wait in that line. No problem. You can skip that line by using, the platform that we provide. That's OLO behind the scenes, and pick up that burger on the way home or wherever it is that you're headed, or perhaps get that delivered even. So we provide that. We were founded in 2005. We have just over 650 employees now. Over 500 customers, as you can see here on the slide. And then pre-COVID, we were 65% remote. That was something that we consciously decided years ago. I'd say 2015, we started actively looking all over the US for talent to make sure we are getting the best and brightest and weren't being myopic in terms of where we were looking. And now, if everything, we're non-COVID and the office were fully functioning and people were going back, we'd be 76% remote. So we have the office as a place of convenience, but right now we're choosing to keep it closed, as you can imagine. But that's a bit about OLO.
Terrific. And it's interesting too. I just saw a discussion online yesterday through a thought leader, I believe at Harvard, and the idea was, how do we think about using the office as a tool rather than the place that we automatically go? So it sounds like you're already leaning well into that with that intentional use of, when do we come in and how do we work collaboratively, successfully, remotely?
Yeah. Listen, we found like it is a great tool. Our office is based in New York City, and it's a completely different dynamic in New York City than it is in Seattle, where I am based. Folks live in much smaller footprints of homes and apartments and such. And so they like to sometimes have the flexibility to still remain in their apartment should they have something going on, just feel like being more comfortable, whatever the reason, right? And then some of them might just want to get out and they need a space. And that's what our office can provide, right? That flexibility. And we find that people deliver their best work when they're not challenged on where they should work. And that gives them the opportunity to make the decision for themselves.
Great. And it sounds like an environment that your leaders are used to. So they've already been flexing this muscle well before,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
some of us before COVID.
not gonna lie, we still had bumps and bruises just like everyone else to navigate once COVID hit. But I do think we were blessed in that we had been so widely remote beforehand. So I think the impact wasn't as great as perhaps it was with other companies, and we're grateful for that.
Yeah, that's terrific. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more. I understand that there were three main drivers for deciding to engage in coaching. Can you tell us more about those? What was the intention?
Yeah. So if you think 2 years ago, so you just saw on the prior slide that we have about 650 employees. 2 years ago, that number was 225. So the landscape has drastically changed for our company and where we're at in our stage. And, keep going back to COVID, but with COVID, there was a lot to navigate, right? At the onset in particular. And, we weren't even sure, it sounds kind of more obvious now, but we weren't even sure what was going to happen with our business and our business model and our customers, right? And being able to support them. So we got our leaders together, and we call that our senior leadership team. It was kind of our senior director and above group, and really got them together on a regular basis to help navigate through that time. And, at that time, that group was 15, maybe 20 people. Now that group is, over 50. And it was through getting that group together and putting great minds together and making effective and quick decisions that we realized we need to invest here in this group, right? This group is crucial to ensuring our business is successful, and they've given so much to the company. We need to continue to give to them. And that started the how can we do that, right, question. And we wanted to be able to meet them where they were at. Everyone has their own expectation of how they should be developed and what would be really great in terms of offering them growth and the opportunity for change in themselves. And these were the first two were really the two that answered the question of what's next. And we should really invest in a coaching experience for them. And then the third one was, how can we make it so it brings them together, right? It doesn't make them feel that they're on an island and only being interested in alone. And then what, but really like helping bring the group together. Like this was an investment for everyone, and that they could meet in cohorts and talk about the coaching experience. And so together, those were the three pillars that really helped us come to the coaching experience and led us to CoachHub.
Excellent. And so let's hear a little bit more about that experience so far. If you would like to offer a little bit of insight, and then we'll go in a little bit, have a double click into each of these of what that experience looks like. But we'd love for you to introduce us to it.
Of course. So being that we were so remote in nature, for me, it was a no-brainer. This was going to be remote. It had to be remote. I mean, COVID or not, that's what we would have done regardless. So, I reached out to a few firms that I'd heard of, and, word of mouth and whatnot, and landed with CoachHub because it just felt like you all had it figured out. You knew the importance of coaching and how to get that done remotely, right? And to partner with us who knew how to do remote or not, right? You knew how to navigate that landscape, and you knew the importance of coaching, which sounds so obvious, but when I was doing my research, you all had it much more figured out, I felt, than the competition. And so we thought how we wanted to structure this, what would make the most sense. And so we took the overall group and we decided we wanted to run a pilot program, because how would this be received? Were there any kinks that we wanted to work out on our end in terms of fostering that community? Was there more we needed to put on into it? And also, I wanted to see what it would look like and feel like. So we created a pilot. I myself joined the pilot, and we did that in July. And so we had about 10 people that were in that initial pilot. And that allowed us to really follow along. CoachHub is as you know, Laura, a great partner in terms of showing you metrics and data related to who's using it, who's not using it, not in terms of individuals specifically, because there's definitely confidentiality there, but in terms of like out of 10 people, are 8 using it, are 4 using it? There's a lot of data for me as an administrator to be able to look at to see, is this a valuable program? And I didn't set the pilot program up to be the make or break, like, oh, we probably won't do this if it's not utilized, or, this will be the push. But it was more of working out the kinks. But ironically, it further emphasized that this really was a value add, that everyone was using it and using it a lot. And I myself really enjoyed it. I like I said, I threw myself into the mix more to just understand and learn to be able to answer questions of our leadership group. But I found it to be, absolutely wonderful and a great career move for me. And I was not even intending it for it to be that way necessarily, right? I just kind of wanted to follow along. So we set it up for an unlimited coaching experience within a 6-month period. Like I said, unlimited coaching sessions, 45 minutes each. And really, these sessions were about the leaders determining what they wanted out of it, what they wanted to learn, how they wanted to grow. We were not tracking or measuring. We felt that this was the best thing for our group at this time, that they should be met where they wanted to be met. And it's given them that ability to lean in as they'd like to on topics that make the most sense for their growth trajectory and conflict management, or whatever it may be at the time.
Terrific. So you're definitely modeling the way with that autonomy and highly personalized approach.
Yes.
and of course, we appreciate the partnership too. It's been a lot of fun, and I love your enthusiasm as a stakeholder and early engager.
Of course. Yeah.
Terrific. And so what we thought we would highlight just a few things here. Please feel free, Deanne, to pop in anywhere you like. I thought I'd highlight just a little bit about, for your leader coaches or coachees, what was their experience? What were some of the things that they would have seen or experienced? And so we certainly kicked off with an onboarding session. That was a partnership between us and you, of course. And we kicked off that journey, and we talked through things like, what is coaching? What can I expect? How will I engage? How does the platform work? How will I partner with my coach? What is the role that you would play within their engagement? We offered an overview, of course, of their coaching a journey, and then we gave them tips and some tricks on how to make the most of their engagement. Using the platform and scheduling and browsing the learning library, all those kind of practical tips to help them make the most from the very beginning. And I think too, when we talked about what coaching is and isn't, I think that that's always interesting too, right? As far as a conversation for people to understand, it's not mentoring or consulting or training or therapy. Coaching is different, right? Whether, to your point, they're concentrated on what they want to learn, how they want to grow. It's a confidential conversation. They do get different perspectives to help them think through challenges, their new ways of thinking, and identify solutions.
That's right. And that confidential piece is important in general, right? But for us, we went public last year, 2021, and it was hugely difficult in terms of a mind shift of like, what can be said, what can't be said. And like, our employees feeling like they can't ever talk. And so to be able to give an option of like, this is a safe place where you can talk about confidential information and work through it, right? Because you need help with what you're have going on at work and help, get that with your coach. So that was a major appeal for our coachees.
Thanks. That's really important business context to understand. It's really a great point that I had not thought of until you and I were talking recently. That is a big shift, right, for a leader in a company as you're gone public. So terrific. I thought I'd also highlight here that one of the things that we oriented folks to is our holistic coaching framework. We won't go into a lot of details about this today, but our framework does bring together what we think about as the 2 parts. growing as a person, that's that personal growth, and your leadership qualities. That's the other side on the right there, inspire as a leader. And so the grow as a person, you'll see there that those main domains are balance, presence, and purpose for personal growth. And then on the inspire a leader side, they're primarily around performance, empowerment, and communication. And each of those six main domains are broken down into 3 additional subdomains that allow leaders to think about, what are their focus areas. They do a self-assessment against those. And it's all about this combination of boosting well-being and performance for themselves, their team, and of course for the organization. So happy to go into more questions about that when we have a little bit more time, but I'd like to make sure that we're able to show the overall journey. So we were just talking about, as we launched, we had that coachee onboarding, and they did their self-assessment in the tool against that model, looking at grow as a person and inspire as a leader. So they did their self-assessment. They also did a questionnaire in the platform that are questions geared towards helping them choose the right coach. So they ask a number of questions that help us understand how to make the best coach match. Things like language, location, experience of the coach, a whole battery of questions that help us make a really great fit. And then once they fill that out, they immediately are matched with 3 coaches right there in the tool. So then they can read their bio and watch their video, kind of get a sense of, what is their philosophy, their approach, and then they choose their coach. And then they're off to the races. Immediately, still right there in the platform, they book their first coaching session. They can start browsing some of those learning nuggets, the whole library of resources if they wish, and they prepare for their first coaching session that you can see there. And as you mentioned just a moment, Deanne, they did this, the target is 6 months with unlimited coaching with a recommendation to meet at least twice a month. Anything else that you'd like to highlight about that coaching experience before we start talking about the support and a little bit about measurement? Very good. Perfect. All right. So speaking of support in your role, Deanne, we'll start there. Also, as part of that onboarding, coachees knew from the very beginning, as you mentioned, they're not alone in this. They're, with some of their other leaders and doing some debriefing, some things that to support that journey. They had you as a contact if they had questions or feedback about the program. Of course, they had their coach, and all of our coaches have a minimum of 6 years of experience, 500 coaching hours, sometimes are often 1,000 or more. For those of us in the U.S. that might be thinking about ICF levels, so it's PCC and above. And we find that our coaches are top rated at 4.5 out of 5 is the average. And then, of course, we have our client experience team who are able to support folks throughout the full coaching program if they have any questions, login issues, technology, anything of that nature.
We've received some great metrics on the coaching program, as I mentioned, I think in brief before. And yes, the support system is great, both from, our employees receiving support on needing to manage some technical difficulties or, anything that might service. And then also from an administrative perspective, my contact at CoachHub is fantastic in terms of making sure we're meeting regularly, going over the data and making sure the full programming is supported.
Great. And I'm going to actually go through some of these pretty quickly, so we leave at least 5 minutes for some Q&A. One of the things that I think was interesting about this approach, I love that it was so self-driven with your leaders being able to choose where they wanted to put their focus for their individual journey. But then as we noticed, we now have 50 or so leaders going through the experience over a period of months. Resilience is what popped up as the number one item that folks were working on. And if we think about the topic of resilience, in today's environment, I think it's probably not too surprising, but I'd certainly love to hear your thoughts on that. And I think the second top priority that was just right below and with resilience was emotional regulation. And we call that the extent to which a person consciously reflects and controls their own emotional state. When you couple that with this definition that you see of resilience here, right, this ability to act and persevere, even in stressful situations, processing that stress positively, right? They're so interrelated and really close. What were your thoughts on, seeing that pop up as the top topic?
I can't say I'm surprised. As I mentioned, like our company size has shifted greatly. We went public. There's a lot to navigate on top of the Great Resignation and all the other things, on a daily basis. So not surprised that folks want to make sure that they're remaining resilient and able to show up every day and great, in a great way, in a great leadership capacity.
Right. Yeah, and I think I would just highlight here too, what I think is so interesting about building resilience is we know that it can be built, it can be learned, and organizational resilience, all the research and especially today is pointing to how important organizational resilience is. It helps to drive flexibility, adaptability, and innovation, and more. And in organizational resilience is really built on the back of individual resilience. So as you build that collective momentum, that's a really key lever in helping your organization to be more resilient. So helping, with future disruptions, because we never know what those are going to be. Again, some of the research even actually says that we can expect more disruptions, more severe and more often, according to Gartner and McKinsey. So I was like, well, that's good to know, but gosh, how does it get a little crazier than it is today? But as we build that resilience muscle, it can be built, and it is so essential to business today. So I'm going to go ahead and go a little quick through these. I will highlight here that even across our CoachHub coachees, aggregated through 2020 and 2021, we'll see that those same two topics that came up as top for some of your leaders today are still in our overall top 5. We'll see that emotional regulation and resilience there. So it's a common theme. Your leaders are certainly not alone, and building that muscle to lead in these times. And here I'd just like to pause before we start moving into our Q&A, is we do have 49 leaders, 124 sessions. I think that was as of last week. This very high rating on this working alliance with the coach. Any other thoughts on what you've seen here in terms of this small measurement? We also have, as you mentioned, I think you mentioned a moment ago, a dashboard that you're able to view all sorts of great metrics around the engagement. Anything else that you would highlight here that tells you that this is working or we're on the right path with your leaders today?
Well, anecdotally, I noticed in the dashboard that you mentioned that, from November to December, we saw an increase of coaching sessions and whatnot. So clearly December was a busy month, as I'm sure it is for most people and most companies. You've got not just a quarter end, but a fiscal year end. You've got, employee evaluations, comp communications, lots stacking up. And so these folks were probably feeling a little bit of the pressure. So they utilized the resource that was available to them to help them navigate and ensure they were resilient during that time. Mm-hmm. So it was fantastic to see that, they really leaned in and chose to take advantage of that offering.
Excellent. Yeah, holiday time is an end of year closeouts is always tough, even more this year. So it's great to see that they leaned in and used that as a resource and support. And I'll end this piece here with just some quotes. This will certainly be in the deck. It's a bit of an eye chart, but I love so many of these anecdotal feedbacks where coachees are able to offer within the platform qualitative free-form feedback of what's going well and just other feedback. And so in particular here, knowing that resilience is so key, knowing a little bit about your business, I thought it was so great that some of your coachees are calling out things here like self-care. I love this quote is that someone said, focusing on strategies for self-care, as my coach offered that the health of an organization is capped by the health of its leaders. So, wow, somebody got a really good nugget that day and really drove home that message, right, of that they really need to take care of themselves, be more resilient, focus on their own wellness. And they mentioned here in their quote that has a trickle effect on their team. And the other thing there too is I think somebody talked about, focusing on their leadership capacity and looking at setbacks as being learning opportunities versus complete failures. So really seeing people, again, those are all components of resilience that are showing up real time. With a few minutes that we have left, I'd like to just move on to our Q&A, I think, here, unless there's something you'd like to close with here, Deanna. We know that coaching can support leaders during all of the times of uncertainty and change, develop that positive mindset, help them deal with life and leadership pressures, build that resilience muscle, lean into their values. And we can offer some practical tips as we talk through our Q&A as well. So as we move into that, I will just highlight here, since we're talking about leadership development specifically in our space of conversation today, you see just some of the use cases, right, where coaching can support leaders at all levels, whether it's executive to frontline. We can do team and group coaching so that people are learning together, help with transitions, help people with inclusive leadership, and even developing a leadership culture. It's really about helping to support those leaders in their day-to-day challenges, building those new muscles and those new mindsets and skills on the day-to-day. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to see if we have any questions in the last couple of minutes. So things you're wondering about.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Deanne. Thanks, beautiful presentation. We just have time for one question.
Sure.
And I'm going to share one from Kelly Kane, who asks, are you planning on leveraging this investment in your leaders as part of assessing manager effectiveness in the future?
I think that one's for you, Deanne. And thank you, Kelly, for the question.
Howard, can you ask that one more?
Sure.
Read that one more time.
Yeah, no problem. Are you planning on leveraging this investment in your leaders as part of assessing manager effectiveness in the future?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So the way that we've organized this is in the way that it's completely confidential, and we're not necessarily having a say on what the leaders need to work on or what they should be talking to their coach about. We're not assessing it from a standpoint of how much is this leader, grown or developed on XYZ topic since this time period. I think we're looking at more on a greater scale, and how is the group collaborating after this? How is conflict management, trending at the company? How is resilience trending? And kind of looking at more as a whole versus individual. I think there is some individual effectiveness learnings that we can take out of it, but it wouldn't be as directive as perhaps the question is intended. But I do think that we're able to, for sure, measure effectiveness as a whole on the group. And I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. So helpful to know. It's just a wealth of information today. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing all the research that you've done from sharing Gartner and Burson and so many other sources to show how important coaching is and how coaching can make a difference in an organization, and especially remote coaching, which is what we are facing so much today. On behalf of HCI, I want to thank you so much, Deanne, for your insights and for your sponsorship. Laura, I want to thank you for your just all the things that you're doing at CoachHub and how you're able to do it and bring it and make it successful. I also want to remind everybody to visit hci.org to access your credits and to be able to check in to ensure that you have your SHRM and HCI recertification. Your credits for attending this webcast will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. While you're there, don't forget to check out our hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on our certifications, virtual conferences, premium membership, and more. One more thank you to our presenters today, Laura and Deanne, and to the good people at OLO. And I'd also like to thank you, our webcast viewer. Thanks for spending a most informative hour with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time in our next webcast. Have a wonderful day, everyone.